Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our Saturday debate show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, on Mac Sports and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages, the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great Northeast Streaming Sports show. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out. We have our shows there, our guests that come on the shows with their bios. We have our stores and links to those stores. So check it out if you could. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Kirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, with our special guest, Dr. Paul Semendinger, and also a guest coming on right after this, Josh Rubin, our Mets expert, bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How are you doing?
Hey, great. And it's great to be back. I mean, I missed last week's debate show, and I was needling Doc before the show, right before we went on. I would have gotten that trivia question right, Doc. You get all the hard ones. I missed the hard ones. And you get a routine ball hit to you. How do you bobble it, Doc? I mean,
it was so easy. It was so easy that I couldn't believe it was so easy. And I'm saying, well, it's not Mantle. So Maris wasn't Maris. Elston Howard was the next year. And then I'm going through the lineup and I'm saying Whitey Ford never won a MVP. So it was so easy that I missed it.
Well, good morning to you, Doc, and good morning, Josh. Glad to have you back with us again, Josh. And Doc, like every Saturday, we love having you on. So, guys, every week I post a poll question, or my producer does, in 3 different New York Yankee fan groups. And the poll for this question is, if you were in charge of the Yankees and you had 3 moves to make before the playoffs happen, what would you do? Would you find a shortstop, even if you had to bring them up for the minors, move DJ to first, trade Voit, get rid of some of the relievers and get some left-handed bats in the lineup for pinch hitting and designated hitting, or get Stan in the outfield a little bit, let him play the outfield, earn his money because he is a good defender, and unblock the DH spot so other people could go in and DH. So I'll start with you, Jack. If you had one of those 3 choices, which one would you make?
You know, it's painful for me to say this because I think he has a really good major league career ahead of him, but I would move Gleyber Torres off shortstop, even if I have to take him out of the starting lineup and plug him in whenever I can. Defensively, he was awful last year. He's struggling this year. It's not working out. I mean, you need a really good defensive shortstop there. Maybe they could get Trevor Story, maybe wherever. I mean, even if it's a good field, no-hit type shortstop, something has to be done there. I mean, there have been so many misplays, and he never really bails the pitch out of situations. And the scapegoatness is made out to be Luke Voit. People say, well, move Luke Voit off first base. Let's get rid of him. Well, Luke Voit is improving a little bit defensively. Plus, he has a big bat. And he shouldn't be the casualty because Gleyber Torres is playing a very weak, defensive shortstop. So that's the way I would go. I would move Gleyber Torres out of the starting lineup if need be and plug him in wherever I can.
Well, listen, that's not one of the choices, Jack. You're either going to move him to second and move DJ to first, or the other 2 choices. So that wasn't one of the choices. So you got to give me one of your choices of those poll questions.
I'm going to tell you, I mean, if that's an absolute ultimatum, I'd move DJ LeMayo to first base, Gleyber Torres to second. And under that circumstance, I don't have the leeway to make Stanton a part-time left fielder where I could platoon him with Boyd in a certain way. I mean, it's pretty restrictive, but within that restrictive question, I would then trade Luke Voit, move LeMayo to first base and Gleyber Torres to second, and get the best defensive shortstop. Hopefully, Trevor Story at short. That would make it easy for me.
Hey, we're going to go to Josh. Josh is a Mets expert, but I know he follows the Yankees. What would you do, Josh, if you had a choice?
I agree with Jack. Choice A in this case. Now's not the time to deplete your bullpen in this day and age. And Stanton, I understand you absorbed a big contract, but he came over as a DH. The Yankees have plenty of outfielders, and I don't like the idea of platooning him also, like Jack said. And I like the idea of, I didn't even think of Trevor Story. I know he's very unhappy, and he's pretty much all but demanded a trade out of Colorado as well after he saw his buddy get dealt to St. Louis. But yeah, I think that's the way to go. And it's true, Voit is the scapegoat because it's not like he's done anything wrong. I think he led the majors in homers last year, right? So it's, he's kind of getting the short end of the stick here, but I think it's the only logical one, the only logical choice.
How about you, Doc? What are your feelings on those three questions, and which one would you take if you had?
Yeah, I think I agree with everybody else here. Those are three tough questions. The Yankees are winning because of their pitching, so I wouldn't do anything to deplete their pitching. So I do want left-handed hitters in the lineup, and I wish they had been constructed that way, but they weren't. And I don't think the time is now to radically alter the team to move away from their strong bullpen to try to address the offense, which is doing very poorly. I would love to see Stanton in the outfield, but Stanton in the outfield is scary because he just doesn't stay healthy anymore. He's a very good outfielder, but if he can't be healthy and putting him out there is going to make him out of the lineup, that doesn't help you at all. So again, with those three choices, I guess the only logical one there for me would be to move Gleyber to second. And again, this is why, all winter long I was saying if the Yankees keep Gleyber and they re-sign LeMahieu, they're going to find themselves in a situation where they have where Gleyber plays better at second base. They're going to play him where he doesn't belong at shortstop, where he's not as good, and tie up a position with DJ LeMahieu playing where Gleyber really should be playing, and it creates a logjam.
Well, I really believe that Stanton's got to earn his keep. I think you're paying him a lot of money for just being a DH, even though he has a great bat and you're worried about him getting hurt. You can say the same thing about Judge. You say the same thing about Hicks. You've got an outfielder out in Stanton who plays a good outfield. He's not a premier outfielder by any means, but you've got to unclog to me that the DH position, so you can give other people rest. And maybe if you do get a lefty or pick up somebody that can come in there and make a hit or be DH, I look at the matchups like they had in the 70s, right? And the bullpen to me, there's way too many bullpen pitchers right now. We don't have the lefties to come off the bench and pitch hit and matchups against certain pitchers. We have to go what we got. And that kind of hurts our hitting a lot. You guys talk, we don't have no hitting. Well, the reason why we don't is because we don't have the matchups anymore. I think there's way too many relievers on every team, to be honest with you. You don't need 11 relievers, that's for sure. But I think Stanton should be playing some outfield. If Judge maybe gets a rest, even a left fielder can get a rest. We know he can't play center, but he sure could play both of those fields and hold his own. And that way, there you go. You got some people with rest. You got a chance if you do pick up a lefty, or maybe there's a couple lefties in the minors that you could bring up later. Who knows? Maybe you get some matchups. So I think Stanton would be my answer anyway. The fans agree with me. They think that Stanton should be moved to the outfield. He should be playing some outfield to unblock that DH role. Second was the Voit move with DJ going to first, but a lot of people didn't want to get rid of Voit, of course. But that was second. And third was to pick up more left-handed hitters and to cut the relief staff a little bit. So that was what they said. So, guys, that's what the fans said. And you guys were at least in second. I was, I guess, lucky to be in first, but I don't know if that even matters. But anyway, this is something else we do every week, guys. We have our Yankees trivia question. We're also going to have, since we got our Mets expert with us, we also are going to have a Mets trivia question. So we'll start with the Yankees trivia question first. And Josh, you're free to guess too. I know you know a lot about baseball, so maybe you'll get the answer and they won't. Who knows? So which Yankee player was the MVP of the American League in 1943? Jack, we'll start with you.
1943. Man,
Yes,
oh man,
sir.
oh man. I mean, you know who jumps out at me immediately? Joe DiMaggio. I don't know the answer in a concrete way. I'd be speculating. I don't know it straight out. I don't want to make the mistake you made last week, Doc. The obvious answer, you know what I mean, with Mickey Mantle, one of the rare ones that you're going to miss. Okay. I would have to say, you know, Joe DiMaggio. I mean, but somehow it's too easy to be right. It's too easy to be right, but I would say Joe DiMaggio, you know, push comes to shove.
Josh, you got an answer? You want to take a shot?
I'll take a wild guess. I know this guy won an MVP. I don't know if it was with the Yankees or if it was during his time in the National League. I will guess Johnny Mize.
There you go. That's a good guess. Not right, but it's a heck of a guess.
Okay.
Doc, you were smiling like you already knew the answer. So
I'm hoping. I'm still reeling in the fact that I got Mickey Mantle wrong last week, and so I'm very nervous here. But I'm going to say it was Spud Chandler.
And Doc, again, ding, 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 ding. You hit it, the nail on the head. It was Spud Chandler.
I never would have gotten that had I been sitting here, the rest of the day. I wouldn't have thought Spud Chandler.
Yes. I was unaware of that too. So Spud Chandler, not a very popular name when you're talking Yankees history, but in 1943 he won the.
Yeah, he's a good pitcher. He may have the record. Again, I would have to look it up, but he has one of the highest winning percentages of all Yankee pitchers of all time.
Wow. See, there you go. See, there's a lot of history we don't know. We think we know a lot about.
Was Joe D in the service in 1943? Was he even playing for the Yankees that year?
That's a great question. Those are the war years, so I bet you he went out somewhere around 42. So I doubt he was even playing in 43.
Very possible. So
we'll find out. I'll check that.
You know, folks, we have two guys. I don't know where Josh is at, but we got Jack down in Florida who's sucking up some extra vacation time because of the gas shortage down there. And we got Doc on the New Jersey shore. Me, I'm in my sports corner here where my wife keeps me when I'm bad. And Josh, it looks like you're at home too.
I'm so used to, I'm so accustomed to saying that I'm in Brooklyn because I lived there my whole life and I work there, but I forgot I actually live in Long Island.
So, guys, I'm going to give you a Mets MVP question, okay? And we'll start with Josh first since he's our Mets expert. Which player is the last Met to win an MVP award?
I believe this is a trick question. I don't believe any Met has ever won an MVP.
How about you, Jack? Do you have a guess at this?
You know who jumps out at me immediately? Tom Seaver. I don't know why Tom Seaver jumps out at me immediately. I never heard that question proposed before, even though it should be a question that's been out there a while. So I'm going to guess that Tom Terrific won it, one of his big years. Was it 69 or another year? I don't know, but that would be my guess, that Tom Seaver.
And Doc, do you have a guess at that?
Well, I'm going to defer to Josh, but the question, if it's a trick question, reminds me of that silly joke where you ask, what's the difference between the hot dogs at Yankee Stadium and Citi Field? Does anybody know the answer to that? The difference between the hot dogs at Yankee Stadium and the hot dogs at Citi Field?
About $3?
No. They actually sell hot dogs in Yankee Stadium in October. That's just a silly one. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to guess Mike Piazza. I don't know if Piazza ever won an MVP, but if Josh says no Met ever did, I'm going to go with that.
Well, Josh is right. The Mets are one of three teams that have never had an MVP. Isn't that unbelievable?
Wait, Keith Hernandez won it when he was with St. Louis.
That was 79, yeah, when he-
That was a co-MVP with Willie Stargell, right?
That doesn't
He was
count.
the batting champion.
Yeah, I was surprised that the Mets have never had an MVP selection. That really shocked me. I mean, they had some terrific teams, so I don't understand it. But hey, that's one of 3 teams, guys, never had an MVP.
Interesting. Just a quick update. DiMaggio was in the service 1943, 44, and 45. So those are the 3 seasons he missed.
And those are prime years of his career, too.
Mm-hmm.
You got that? Well, Ted Williams had the same problem, right, guys?
Yeah,
So,
and Ted actually was in twice because he also served in Korea.
And he won the Triple Crown before the war and after the war.
Yes. There's Josh. Look at he's not just a Mets expert. He's got his MLB hat on today. So, guys.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
So, this is where me and the great Jack Hirsch, now aided by our 2 special guests today, start our debate where me and Jack square off and we see who knows more and has the best argument on these hot topics coming up. And Jack always goes first and when we start this debate. So we're going to start off with the most popular Philly icon in the history of Philadelphia sports. Jack, you're up first.
I mean, there have been a number of iconic Philadelphia athletes. I mean, just going over the list, I mean, as Allen Iverson pops out at you, Smoking Joe Frazier, Mike Schmidt, Kobe Bryant, even though he never played, for the Sixers, Dr. J, Steve Carlton, Wilter Still Chamberlain. But I'm going to go off form. I'm going to go with a hockey player, Bobby Clark. A lot has to be said about someone who's been with the team for his whole career. And Bobby Clark did not only spend his whole entire 15-year career with the Philadelphia Flyers, he became an executive within the organization, which he is to this day. And Bobby Clark was the staple of the Broad Street Bullies that won the back-to-back cups in Philadelphia, and arguably Philadelphia's most iconic sports team ever was the Philadelphia Flyers. And he became a captain at age 23. And even today, all the former Flyers on that team, they revere Bobby Clark. He was the straight-out leader of that team. He was respected by everyone. He's the type of guy, athlete who's never been dirty, never been in any negative controversy, one of the greatest NHL players of all time. So, in all due respect to all the other, athletes involved, I'd say it's Bobby Clark, just the stability, the type of player he was. He was as good within his sport as any of the others were within their sport as far as performance goes, at least close. But considering what his teams accomplished, and he was the centerpiece of those teams, and what he meant to his sport, I mean, he's the biggest Philadelphia, sports icon of all time, unless you want to go fictional and include Rocky Balboa in this. It's Bobby Clark.
Well, Jack, I'll go second. And, when we say most popular, we don't just mean a guy that's played on a team for the longest. We're talking about who you would recognize that represents Philadelphia. Bobby Clark, of course, would be amongst them. But if you want to go with the most popular, there's no doubt it's Dr. J. Dr. J didn't start with Philly. He was over with the Nets in the ABA is where he started. In fact, the Knicks had a chance to sign him, but didn't, which was probably another one of their biggest mistakes in the history of the franchise. The 76ers got a berth. I mean, the Nets got a berth because they traded and let Dr. J go to the NBA. And for all intents and purposes, they got that berth for giving Dr. J to the Philadelphia 76ers. quickly became the leader of the Sixers, led them to 50 wins in his first season. Irvin helped the 76ers beat the Celtics. They lost to Portland in 6 games, but it wasn't because of Dr. J. One of the first NBA players to endorse many products. Everybody thinks of Michael Jordan. Well, that's not true. The first one was Dr. J. I remember that little commercial. Hey, Dr. J, where'd you get those moves? I remember that as a kid. He endorsed shoes. He endorsed many products. And the 76ers made it to the East Final twice and faced the Celtics. They also played them 80, 81, 82, 85. There was a video game, one-on-one, Dr. J versus Larry Bird in 1980. He lost to the Lakers, but had one of the most legendary shots ever. He was down the baseline, came back underneath the basket, and made a move behind the back, sort of over his shoulder, reverse layup, called one of the greatest shots in NBA history. In 1982, when Moses Malone came along, the 76ers swept the Lakers. When Dr. J had another player that was another Hall of Famer, they easily beat the Lakers. In 1986, Dr. J played his last season to sold-out standing ovation stadiums around the league, including many of his rival teams that he went up against, including LA and Boston. Highlights for generations to see, guys. I mean, that slam dunk over Walton while the 4 Celtics were chasing him. Of course, I said that'd be the baseline move. And, rock the baby over Michael Cooper. I still remember that shot. Of course, he has a statue in South Philly. If you talk Philadelphia sports, the first person that pops into my mind, of course, is the doctor, Dr. J. So, Doc, we'll go to you from one doc to another. Who would be your most popular Philadelphia sports icon?
All right, it's not even a question, and he may not be real, and he isn't real, but Rocky Balboa is obviously the question for the greatest. You want to talk about a guy with a statue? There it is, right? He's got the statue. It's still there. People flock to the statue. He was a great fighter, and he was the champion, and he kept coming back, and he was the best. But anyway, if you want to not use Rocky, I would use most of what Jack was saying as far as a great player who represented a team, who didn't have any controversy, and who's considered one of the best in his sport, maybe the greatest third baseman of all time. It's Mike Schmidt. And for an 8-year period from 1976 through 1983, Mike Schmidt led the Phillies to 6 postseason appearances, including 2 World Series. He was a member of that legendary 1980 Phillies team that won the World Series. And he was a Philly for 18 years. And if you want to pick a greatest sports legend from Philadelphia, I don't think you can go wrong with picking Mike Schmidt.
That was short and sweet, Doc. So Doc gives us Mike Schmidt, of course, one of the best. Josh, turning to you real quick. I know I threw these debate topics at you quick. I've been out of my mind busy. But do you have a guy that you would put up there as one of the greatest sports icons in Philly?
Yeah, absolutely. Jack mentioned him briefly, and Doc started saying that it might not be legitimate, but if we're talking sports icons that are identifiable with a city, which a lot of players these days are not really attached to the cities that they play for anymore. But the answer is Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa is the greatest sports icon associated with the city of Philadelphia in history. Jack, is Sylvester Stallone in the Boxing Hall of Fame?
Yeah, he is in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So from that perspective, you could say he's real because Sylvester Stallone did get inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, but Rocky Balboa didn't get inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame.
That's fine.
Sylvester Stallone did, so you can't say Rocky Balboa is a Hall of Famer.
That's fine. Doc mentioned he has a statue, a very recognizable statue. I don't think there's a single person in the entire country who's ever been to Philadelphia, who's been to that museum, who has not run up those steps and jumped at the top, leapt in the air at the top, just like Rocky did. Everybody knows the scene of him running through the streets of Philadelphia, culminating in running up those steps. Everyone knows the story of the comeback fight against Apollo Creed in the second movie. Everyone knows the story of Rocky single-handedly ending the Cold War in 1985 by beating Ivan Drago, by going to Russia on Christmas and slaying the tall Russian. And he's just very, very much identifiable with the city of Philadelphia, more so than a lot of other athletes. And if we're talking about who people in Philadelphia identify with most, it's probably not Rocky. But if we're talking about nationwide, who does the nation identify with the city of Philadelphia in the sports world? The answer is Rocky Balboa.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. Good job.
Yeah, listen, and I could say the greatest baseball player of all time was Herman Munster, if you saw the episode.
Jack, you said Kobe Bryant was a Philadelphia sports icon. That's like saying Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a Long Island, a New York sports icon.
Right. No, I see
Memorial
the point. Listen, I'm a boxing guy, so Rocky Balboa warms my heart, in a sense, even though I would have rather seen Joe Frazier. Doc, you mentioned the 1980 Philadelphia Phillies, a legendary team. They weren't a legendary team.
Oh, that
they
was
were
such
just another World Series winner, but they weren't a legendary team. The Broad Street Bullies were a legendary team. They're back-to-back cups, but not those Phillies. They were colorful with Mike Schmidt, Pete Rose.
Tug McGraw.
But but I wouldn't call them legendary. I wouldn't go that far.
Well, wow. I would think for Philadelphia they were, because they broke this string of decades of the Phillies never winning a World Series. And so it became a really a team that defied really a lot of what Philly has been defined by in a lot of sports. And even in the first Rocky movie, right? Rocky loses. Is by coming close and falling short. And Rocky, the Phillies in 1980 finally defied that. So I think for that definition, you might consider them legendary.
He might have lost the fight, but he went the distance. So that was
he did.
That was the.
And he's not just
win.
Another bum from the neighborhood. Well, we could spend all day just doing Rocky.
You can't go wrong with Rocky Balboa. But as far as Dr. J goes, let me just say his best years were the 3 years with the Nets and the ABA. And you said, Mac, well, we don't blame him that the Sixers lost to the Portland Trail Blazers. We blame the whole team. That team was dysfunctional. They went up 2-0 against the Trail Blazers. They didn't play team ball. They were selfish. Each guy was looking out for himself. Jack Ramsey, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, described Dr. J as a lazy defender. Now, Dr. J was a great, great player, but historically, when we look back, he hasn't passed the test of time in his greatness the way Magic and Bird have. So when we talk about the short list of greatest players of all time, we don't talk Dr. J.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense. Dr. J it stands right next to Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Now, what you just said there was nonsense. Dr. J was one of the most explosive scorers on the court. He was Michael Jordan before there was a Michael Jordan. And we're talking about popular, Jack. We don't start tearing everybody's argument apart because you're saying, well, he didn't spend all there and this team wasn't legendary. Bobby Clark isn't legendary either, Jack. Bobby Clark was a great hockey player. He was a great Philadelphia sports guy, but he wasn't popular. You're talking putting him up against Dr. J. You're talking putting him up against Mike Schmidt. You're talking about putting him up against Joe Frazier. It's not even close.
If you ask the people of Philadelphia, objective sports fans who treated all sports equally, who was the greater Philadelphia treasure?
That's not the
Bobby
debate.
Clark or Dr. J. They would go with Bobby Clark, who was a greater Philadelphia treasure for that city.
That's not the debate. The debate is, Jack, who's the most popular? Bobby Clark, I would think, might be a brother of Dick Clark. I don't even know. I mean,
who's the most iconic? It's not just a popularity contest.
No, that was not the question. The question was, who was the most popular Philadelphia sports player of all time? Bobby Clark is not even in the conversation. So stop.
I would say Allen Iverson was more popular than Dr. J.
No, not Dr. J. That would be foolish. More popular than Bobby Clark would be the right answer. So. Guys, let's push on to the next one as Jack rips us off for our answers.
Objective sports fan. That's an oxymoron, I think.
I love him, though. He's the best. So the next debate question, guys, and hi to Keith. Good morning to David. And Audrey, thanks for joining us this morning. Spoken like a true legendary boxer's wife. Saying Rocky got her interested. That's beautiful. I love that. So anyway, folks, let's get on to the next debate, the debate topic. And we're talking about Aaron Judge will be coming up on a contract. And he had a great night last night, so this is going to help one of us, but it still is not going to change the argument. So I'll go first, and we'll take turns as we go along. So Judge was rookie of the year, right? Aaron Judge came out smoking, 50 home runs, great outfielder. I mean, the man has an arm, goes around the field and owns the field. But the biggest problem is he's injured all the time. And though he's a little hot right now, that's not going to change the conversation. Even in 2017, right, when he came out, he had arthroscopic surgery on his shoulder, followed by 2018. You know, after the All-Star break, he was 277 with 25 home runs. He's doing his thing, but gets hit on the wrist and has to miss a few months and finished about 278 with 27 home runs. In 2019, he was hurt twice. He had an oblique strain. He came back in June and finished the season. And I'm sorry, 2020 he was hurt twice. August 14th, and then again in August 26th. You know, there are some players, guys, out there that have injury problems for whatever reason. I mean, we can make a lot of comparisons in a lot of sports. Jimmy Garoppolo jumps right to my mind. The guy went to Super Bowl, but is hurt all the time. He was one throw away from winning it, but he's hurt all the time. So what did the 49ers do? They draft another quarterback. And though Judge could be one of the greatest ball players, he could be a Hall of Famer, there's no doubt. He has all the potential. I don't think you should sign him to a large contract, a many-year contract. I think at the most 5, I would try for 3. I'd pay him the highest I could, as high as any ball player out there. But I want to see if this man, for 3 years, can play without getting hurt. If he can finish a season and play a season and not get hurt so he has to be taken out of the ball game or out of the ball game for weeks to months. I mean, this is going to be a big contract, guys. And if they decide to trade or release Judge or whatever the case may be, hopefully trade if they decide to trade him, they still can get a boatload of players. He's still got that potential. Teams love a Judge. They would love having a big name, popular guy that could be one of the greatest ball players of all time on their team. So I definitely wouldn't go a 9-year, 10-year contract with Judge. You know, that to me, that would be foolish. 3 years, 5 at the max. Give him the max money you can, $30 million a year, whatever it is. But talk to his agent, talk to him, sit it down, say, hey, listen, we want you to stay a Yankee. We want you to be to stay here. But listen, we can't sign you to a 9-year contract if you're going to get hurt every year. Show us that you can play either hurt and still play well, or show us that you don't get hurt. So that's my opinion. If they come up on a large extension with Judge, I don't think they should do that. So what do you think, Josh?
Man, wasn't it great before the days of free agency and Curt Flood when teams could just tell players, here's your contract, this is what you're making, and you're playing for us, and you don't really have a say in it. So it's rough because Aaron Judge is 29 years old. And, you know, from the player's perspective, you understand these guys want to make as much guaranteed money as they possibly can because they don't have a lot of time to play, certainly in the prime of their career. I wish that it was that we could just make incentivized contracts and really make these guys earn every penny, you know? And I agree with you. To offer Aaron Judge anything longer than a 5-year contract is really playing Russian roulette. But yeah, over a shorter term contract, if you could load it up and offer him as much money as possible, make it as lucrative as possible for him. And maybe he could say, you know, in 5 years, I'll be 34. Maybe I could get another big contract, you know? So if you're talking about a 5-year, $150 million contract, that is tough for a player to turn down, to be staring down $150 million just to get greedy, to think like, well, I understand, $270 million. What can you buy with $270 million that you can't buy with $150 million? But it's tough for us. We can't spend other people's money and think about other people's finances like that. But I think if they offered him a 5-year, $150 million contract, that's $150 million guaranteed dollars. So I think that would be the play. I like where your head is at, Mac.
How about you, Doc? What do you think?
Yes, so I'm going to sort of agree with both of you guys. In 2018, Judge missed 50 games. In 2019, he missed 60 games. Last year, he missed 32 games. And, I think we have to remember this, and people don't bring this up, but he was hurt basically for the first half of the year last year. He would have missed like 100 games if they had played a full season. He came back because the season was delayed and he only ended up missing 32 games. But that was only because the season didn't start on time. Here's a trivia question. How many times has Aaron Judge hit over 30 home runs in a season? Once. How many times has he ever driven home more than 67 runs in a season? Once. And that was in that big rookie year. He signed through next year. The way the contracts are set up, teams have the advantage until a player becomes a free agent. Judge took a long time to get to the big leagues, so he's not going to become a free agent in his 20s. He'll become a free agent when he's 31. I don't think there's any reason for the Yankees to rush it. I would not give him a big long-term deal. They're already tied down to Stanton. Judge is a different type of body type. He's a gigantic, super strong man who unfortunately also gets injured. The Yankees, in their history, even in the recent history, have also let a couple of iconic guys go. And when their contracts came up, that happened with Robinson Cano. It happened with Andy Pettitte. You get to the point where you give a reasonable offer and you say, if it's not good enough, then we're going to let you go. The Yankees can't let Aaron Judge and his popularity and his potential hamstring them for the rest of the time that he's in his 30s for the next 10 years, because it just seems to be pretty clear that he's not going to be on the field as often as the Yankees would need him to be in order to earn, a $100 million, $200 million contract. I also like to bring up that on October 22nd, 1974, the Yankees traded an iconic outfielder who was the face of the franchise, and that was Bobby Mercer, and they got Bobby Bonds for him. And then they flipped Bobby Bonds the next year for Mickey Rivers and Ed Figueroa, and those two guys helped the Yankees to another championship. Listen, I think we all feel the same about Judge. We love him. We want him to be a Yankee forever. Is he worth a long-term, super expensive contract? I just don't think he is. That's unfortunate. You wish he could have it. You root for the guy as a human being to make as much as he can. But if you're running the franchise, I think you let this season play out, you let next season play out, and then you see what happens.
Okay, Jack.
I'm going to tell you, I was at a couple of years ago, a Yankee Kansas City game at Yankee Stadium. Aaron Judge is having a decent year to that point. He's on track to a good year. He gets hit with a pitch. I think it was in the hand. It injures him. It fractures his hand, his arm, or whatever. I don't remember specifically. And does that make him injury prone? Not going to happen to anyone. He gets hit with a pitch. That's what put him out of action a long time. He has injury issues, but he's not so badly injury prone. So if you forget that season where he would have continued playing, the argument wouldn't quite be the same that he's so injury prone. Aaron Judge is the face of the New York Yankees right now. He's taken that over for Derek Jeter, not to the same extent. Little kids go to Yankee Stadium. Who are they screaming for? They're screaming for Aaron Judge. Adults, they love Aaron Judge, the image. He's clean cut. He loves being a Yankee. He's the heir apparent to Derek Jeter there. You don't get rid of guys like that. You don't trade them away. I agree with the argument that you guys are making. These crazy 10-year contracts are stupid. They're insane. Unless a guy is 25 years old and he's a Mike Trout or Derek Jeter at the age of 25, you don't sign him to this insane 10-year deal like the Mets did with Francisco Lindor. Age 27, signing him till he's age 38. They're not going to get the full value on that contract on the back end of it, they're going to really be burned. But I guess Steve Cohen, you know, he has deep pockets. But Aaron Judge is 29, like Doc pointed out. They haven't signed him through next year. He goes to arbitration next year. Okay, that's what's basically it's going to be. They have the Yankees under control. They have to sign him through the age of 35, 36. They should do it now. It should be like a 6-year contract. I would maybe go 7 at the very most if the price is right for the 7th year, if he's willing to take a lower amount. I think, Josh, what you mentioned, $30 million a year, I don't think they'll have to pay him quite that much. I think the George Springer deal with Toronto, 6 years, $150 million, would work for Judge. I think he would sign it right now. Okay, beginning for next year's contract, the 6-year extension. It would take him, you know, through the age of 35. And Aaron Judge, you keep comparing him to Giancarlo Stanton. Aaron Judge is an elite right fielder. He's an asset in the outfield. It's not just a question, well, Aaron Judge doesn't hurt you in the outfield. Aaron Judge helps you as a right fielder, okay? Listen, the Yankees signed Aaron Hicks to a 7-year deal. I mean, how's that working out?
Not well.
I mean, not well at all. I mean, it was only $10 million a year. The investment wasn't as great. But with Aaron Judge, he's going to be there for years to come. You don't want to move on from Aaron Judge. He gives the team like an identity, you know, that other Yankee players don't. You make a great example of Bobby Mercer. He was the face of the Yankees, but during a time the Yankees were losers. Okay, he was supposed to be the heir apparent to Mickey Mantle. That didn't quite work out, but the Yankees got in return in Bobby Bonds, a better player. We all knew at the time Bobby Bonds was better than Bobby Mercer. So as painful as it was to move on, you know, from Bobby Mercer, that would be the same thing. Look, if we could get Mike Trout, and Aaron Judge has to be part of the deal, no one's complaining, you know, about trading him, but that's not the case. Sign Aaron Judge to a 6-year deal. Sit him down this weekend, do a $25 million per year. I think that works, the 6-year deal. If Aaron Judge is going to demand a crazy 10-year contract, then I agree, let him walk. I don't care what the image is, but you have to do everything you can to sign Aaron Judge. And a 3-year deal, a 4-year deal isn't going to get it done in my view. 6-year deal, you know, maybe a 7-year at most, you know, will get it done, and that's what the Yankees should do.
Well, Jack, you're good at spending other people's money for no reason. The guy doesn't play a full season. Why would you want to invest 7 years at some $30 million a year for somebody who doesn't stay on the field? I don't care how good he is. He's got to be able to show that he can stay on the field.
Did you see last night's game, Mac? He had 2 homers. Aaron Judge is doing great this year.
He does that all the time, Jack, and then he gets hurt. You got to prove to me that you can stay healthy. Why would I want to spend $210 million on somebody when he doesn't play all the time?
So what's going to happen? He's going to prove to you he can stay healthy. He's going to have an MVP caliber year next year. Then the price and the years are going to become exorbitant, and you won't be able to sign him unless you're going to have to give him 8, 9 years and crazy money. You don't want to wait for that to happen. Sign him now when his value hasn't quite peaked, because if he comes up with a monster year, he's going to be awfully hard to sign.
Well, the past hasn't showed me he's going to have a monster year because he can't stay on the field. He had 1 good year, Jack. That's it. 1 good year, and how many years has he been there? That's because he stays hurt. And I'm not gonna. If I'm the Yankees, and I know if Doc and Josh agree with me, but if I'm the Yankees, I'm not giving him 7 years. There's no way.
Yeah, you can't. And again, we love the guy. He's a great player, but if you're hurt all the time, and for Judge, it's unfortunate for him that he becomes a free agent after his age 31 year. And I don't think, if I'm Aaron Judge, even now, because his name carries so much weight and he is the heir apparent to Derek Jeter, and he is the face of the franchise, I don't think he'd sign for $25 million. I wouldn't. I'd say, oh no. I'm Aaron Judge. You got to pay me the big dollars. I'm looking 35. I'm looking for a monster contract if I'm Aaron Judge. I'm not just going to go, yeah, I like the Yankees, I'm going to sign for $150 million like George Springer did. George Springer's no Aaron Judge, and George Springer had to leave this team where he is to get that money. I think Aaron Judge is going to demand big money, and I think the Yankees have to then just say if that's what the case is, the Yankees are going to have to say we can't do it. It's not worth it. Well, you had a great rookie year, and then you haven't been able to be healthy. And if the only injury, and they use this argument with Stanton because he got hit in the head, and that was he missed only 1 year because of that. That wasn't his fault. Anybody can get hit by a pitch. Okay, take that injury away. Has he been healthy the other times? No. So it's not just the one injury. It's been a whole lot of injuries.
Well, I'm going to tell you that Josh could comment on this. There's something about right fielders in New York because Michael Conforto is in his walk year, and his agent is Scott Boras, and I would never deal with Scott Boras unless I was absolutely forced to. Let's say the Mets called up the Yankees and offered Conforto for Judge, okay, and they were each in their last year. Would you make the deal? I wouldn't make the deal. That's how highly I regard Aaron Judge, and I think a lot of Michael Conforto. Josh, what do you think?
You're putting me in a tough spot because I love Michael Conforto. I'm not sure how old he is compared to Judge. I would have to assume he's a little bit younger. He's got a couple years on Judge. It depends, it depends on how many years we're talking about having each for the future. But I guess straight up, I would have to take Aaron Judge over Michael Conforto. I don't get what you're saying with I wouldn't deal with Scott Boras. It's not like these general managers have a choice of which agents they get to deal with and which they get to ignore.
Boras takes everyone to free agency. He makes it murderous.
He's a very wealthy man as a result.
And Aaron Judge, his agent, Michael Conforto, his agent is Scott Boras, and Scott Boras wants to take him to free agency. That's why there was no movement to get a contract done. Francisco Lindor was in his walk year, but they got a deal done at free agent numbers. They could have waited on Lindor and gotten that deal done. But with Conforto, the Mets are waiting, and Scott Boras is glad to have his client wait. And it's just a difficult fit to me, to deal with Scott Boras. I don't know, Doc, you talked about being a GM.
Jack, let's push out to the next debate question because Josh has got to be gone by 9. So
I can stretch it. I'm good, Mac.
Okay, all right, cool. Excellent. So anyway, let's push out to the next question. We're going to talk about California Angels and Pujols, right? Pujols, guaranteed Hall of Famer, first ballot. They break up last year. Want to know who would be more responsible for this kind of ugly breakup between the two? I mean, he's played 10 years for the Angels. So, Josh, if you're ready, we're gonna let you go at this first. If you had to say someone was to blame for this, the way this is broke up, who would you put the most blame on?
The team, the Angels. I understand that Pujols' numbers are not good this year, and very rarely do players get to go out on their own accord. But I heard a great interview with the old Major League pitcher Dan Haren this week, and he said that the way that the Angels should have handled this situation with a player like Pujols is you don't cut him like this, you don't let him go, you put him on the DL. You put him on a 60-day DL. You come up with something. He's however old he is, whatever age it says on paper, we don't even know if that's accurate. You can come up with some sort of vague, mysterious tweak, some injury, something that's hampering him. And then you put him on a 60-day DL, and then, you extend it a little bit more. And after a while, people forget about it, and they don't even, it's not even a blip on the radar as he kind of just fades into retirement, into not oblivion, but into the annals of baseball lore. So I would put it on the Angels in this one.
Doc, what do you think?
I'm going to say that nobody's at fault. This Albert Pujols is actually part of an example of the argument that we're having over Aaron Judge, right? except that Aaron Judge was never Albert Pujols at Albert Pujols' MVP levels when he was one of the greatest of all time. But he was an older guy. Let me just pull up his stats real fast here. When the Angels signed him, he was 32. He finished his age 31 season. That's what Aaron Judge is going to be, a free agent. And they gave him this ginormous contract. And everybody knew at the time, or at least you had to think at the time, like, here's a guy who people aren't going to age all that well, right? And so he hasn't aged very well. He's had some nice years with the Angels, but the last couple of years in his 40s, he's been terrible. And there has to come a point in time when a team has to say, I can't afford to pay you. And I mean, I think they still have to pay him, but you're clogging a position on the roster. And I don't think you're allowed to say, like, you just have a mysterious illness and you're not allowed to play. I think Albert Pujols, as far as I know, is still going to try to pick up with another team, and he has every right to do that and try to see if he can't revive his career. But I think you get to the point, he went for the long-term contract at the big money, and he had to know that there was a chance at the end of that contract he wasn't going to be still with the team because his age would catch up with his skills. And so I don't think anybody's at fault here. He was doing terribly, and the team's letting him go. That's what a team should do. And Albert Pujols shouldn't think, like, just because I'm Albert Pujols, they should keep me, even if I'm terrible. And he's been terrible.
Jack, what are your thoughts on this? Who do you think?
I mean, there's blame on both sides, but more so on Pujols' side. I mean, let's examine what happened when he left the St. Louis Cardinals. If he decided he was going to move on from the St. Louis Cardinals, then it's okay for the Angels to decide to move on from Pujols. People forget the St. Louis Cardinals offered Albert Pujols a 9-year contract. So for one extra year that the Angels were offering to make it 10 years instead of 9, he decided to go with the money, which is his right. Albert Pujols, I can make this argument next to Stan Musial, perhaps, was the most iconic position player, one of the most iconic position players. Let me not get in that argument because the other St. Louis Cardinals, I went a little too far there. But he was an iconic St. Louis Cardinal. He was a treasure for the city of St. Louis. They offered him a 9-year deal. He wanted 10 years. The Cardinals thought, wow, our 9-year deal is taking him to the age of 40. We can't go anymore. We're at the end of the road. So he goes for the extra year with the Angels. He wasn't nearly as good a player with the Angels as he was with the Cardinals. With the Cardinals, he was a Hall of Fame player based on his Cardinal career alone. With the Angels, he was no more than a good player, okay? But with the Cardinals, he was a great, great player. So, and he's hitting 198. Do something about it. You want to stay in the lineup? He had the chance to do something about it. While he wasn't producing on the field, you mean to tell me it never entered his mind they might move on from him, they might sit him down? There's not an urgency to start hitting and start performing. He wasn't doing it, okay? And then when they sat him down, he's starting to become disgruntled. And him being in the dugout, he was going to be a bad influence because it's very difficult for a superstar to sit. We saw what happened here with A-Rod in New York. The Yankees moved on with him during the year because it's a very uncomfortable situation. I mean, for a former superstar to just sit there. Listen, could the Angels have handled it better? Did Joe Madden handle it poorly by telling Pujols he was going to be in the lineup on a Wednesday and then yanking him out of the lineup without telling him? Of course he handled it poorly. And Pujols, the problem with Pujols and great players, they have a feeling of entitlement. Oh, I'm a star. I'm a former MVP of this league. I'm a future Hall of Famer. Treat me a little differently. Perhaps had Pujols been with the Angels his whole career, like Mike Trout was and Derek Jeter with the Yankees, you treat them with a little more reverence. But let's face it, he went for the extra year. He went for the 10-year contract instead of the 9-year one that the Cardinals were offering him at an annual salary that I believe was similar. So I don't have a great deal of, sympathy for Albert Pujols here. I feel he's more at fault than the Angels, even though the Angels could have and should have handled it better than they did.
Well, Jack, I'm going to pretty much piggyback what you say there. Listen, Pujols is only 33 home runs away from 700 home runs. He didn't have good years. This man was unbelievable first baseman, great hitter. His average is up there. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But he's in the final year of his contract, and he didn't announce that he was retiring. I mean, if he announced he was retiring, which I don't think he's gonna, then the Angels had an option, right? They could have gave him a goodbye tour. They could have announced him and had a big celebration. But Pujols didn't want to do that. It looks like, as Doc said, Pujols wants to keep playing. And if that's true, then that's on him. That's not on the Angels. I mean, to get mad at the Angels and not go to the the announcement or press conference or being mad because you're on the bench. Well, as Jack said, you're not playing well enough to play. The Angels gave him 10 years, $240 million. I mean, get all mad as you want. That's a lot of security, and that's a lot of money for one player. So I agree with Jack here. I think if Pujols was going to retire, I would think the management of not only the Angels, but probably St. Louis would have joined in and gave him sort of a farewell tour, to each stadium like they did with some of the greats. Pujols kind of reminds me of Willie Mays in his last year right now. I mean, he's a former Hall of Famer that at least Mays, he said he's done. Pujols hasn't said that. Pujols is a very proud man. That's fine. You want to go with another team, that's fine. But don't blame the organization that just gave you $240 million over 10 years. And if you want to do what you want to do, that's fine. If he wanted to retire, I would imagine the Angels would have handled it a lot different than they did. So I think it's Pujols' fault too. And so, folks, we're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to come back up on the other side. We got a lot more debate going. We got some great guests with us. Me and Jack always handle business with each other, but we got two very informative, smart people here that are joining the debate, and Josh Rubin and our weekly guest, Dr. Paul Semendinger. Both know a lot about baseball and a lot about sports. So we'll be right back, guys, right after these messages. Please stick with us. Thank you.
If you serve honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Found some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, the legendary Jack Hirsch, and our two special guests, our weekly guest, Dr. Paul Semendinger, MLB Yankee expert, and our Mets expert, Josh Rubin, who I've been very delightfully surprised with his knowledge of sports and the game, because we really didn't get into it with him about the other stuff, except for Mets when we've had on the last couple of times. So I'm glad we have Josh on, and hopefully he can start making regular appearances with us too. I really enjoy having on. I know everybody that's viewing this really enjoys having you on too, Josh. So thanks a lot. Listen, we've been getting a lot of comments. A lot of people have checked in today, which is great. Carlos has been on a roll. Carlos comes in once in a while. He loves to either rib us a little bit, but he does make some really good points now and then. So we really enjoy having Carlos on there along with Keith and the others that come on regularly. So, guys, we've covered a lot so far in the brief hour we were on. And on Thursday, we have a special guest that comes in, the Iceman, John Scully, who was a multi-champion in the Golden Gloves. He fought. He was ranked in not only the middleweight division, but light heavyweight division. He's now trained. He's trained a few champions, and he's helping train right now Artur Beterbiev he's one of the light heavyweight champions right now. And he's really knowledgeable about boxing, both inside and out of the ring. Writes, analyzes, and he comes on and we talk to him a little bit about what happened in the last fight. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. Saunders got his cheekbone broken 3 places and his eye socket an optic injury too. And we talked to him about there was a lot of different things about him quitting, and some of the quitting, people get upset. The fans get upset when boxers quit. So we're going to pose the question, and Jack's going to go first. Should boxers get criticized when they quit during a fight?
On balance, no. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders, despite suffering a horrific injury, if someone smirked about him quitting, they could be excused, because there was this heavyweight from England, Daniel Dubois, who took the 10 count on a knee because he suffered a similar injury. And Billy Joe Saunders came out and he said, "Oh, I would never quit like that, take the 10 count. They'd have to bash my skull in, do this to me, do that to me." And then the same thing happens to him, and he retired, on his stool. His corner stopped the fight. Nothing's the matter with that. I saw a courageous fighter, George Chuvalo, who fought Joe Frazier years ago, get hit in the eye, and he turned to the referee because the pain was excruciating and quit that moment. I never criticize fighters for quitting. If you see the amount of fighters who actually die in the ring because the fight has gone on too long, you'd understand. And so many of them suffer, memory loss in later years and their life is short. And I could go down from Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Willie Pep. And even though we could say, well, there's no evidence that boxing caused it, they don't have the longevity, quite the longevity, that the average person would have. It catches up to them late on. And if you see these cornermen, I mean, I hate to use the word incompetent, but they keep pushing the fighter to continue. You see the referees, when they should be stopping fights, they think they're doing the fighter a favor by giving them every chance to continue to win the fight. They're giving them every chance to die in the ring, actually. They think they're doing them a favor, and they're actually not doing it. And I blame the fighters themselves. There's this mentality, I'm a warrior. I'm going to go out on my shield. And there's a stigma involved. If a fighter turns to the referee, he knows he can't win, and he says, look, I've had it. The way Roberto Duran did, I'm sure you'll come up with that example, Mac, against Sugar Ray Leonard. He's stigmatized. I mean, there are rare instances where a fighter should be criticized, like Buster Douglas. After beating Mike Tyson, he doesn't train hard for the Evander Holyfield rematch. He collects his $24 million. I don't know how much of that he cleared. He gets hit a punch. He goes down. He kind of rubs his nose and figures, I don't want to get up. He's heaving and huffing and puffing because he's not in shape for that fight. In that case, I would criticize a fighter. But for the majority of the time, no. If a guy doesn't feel he can win, he should if he could take it into his own hands, he should, because they don't get the protection from their cornermen, the referees, or the ringside physicians the way they should, in my opinion.
Well, even when I don't feel strongly about something, I'm still going to take the opposing view because, of course, this is a debate show. So let's start off with boxing itself, right? This is what the fighter wants to do. If he wants to become a professional fighter, he's going to get hit. He's going to get hurt. It's sort of like football and hockey, right? You sign up for this, Jack. You are going in to knock somebody out or get knocked out. That's the whole basic premise of boxing. They used to box until somebody got knocked out. They would go 80 rounds. It didn't matter. This is what boxing is based off of. So if you're injured like as Saunders would, I understand. But again, this is what you do. This is what the sport you sign. You don't have to box. You can do something else that you won't get physically hurt doing. They say people have died in the ring. Very rare. There's been a couple that I know of that have died. It's very rare for that kind of sport. So when you're going to go in and fighters do want to continue fighting, some fighters are behind and come back and win the fight. I remember Mike Weaver. He won the fight because he came back and he won the fight. He was beaten the whole fight. I know other fights
against John Tate you're talking about.
Right. And there are certain fights, there are certain fighters, such as Bull Durham, such as Joe Smith, that can take a pounding and keep going. That is what fighting is all about. And again, they don't have to do this. So while I agree there are certain circumstances like getting your cheekbone broke and your optic eye, you may go blind. I understand that. Sugar Ray Leonard was almost blind in one eye and continued fighting. Now, why he did that is because that's what he wanted to do. I mean, how can you tell a guy, no, you can't fight anymore? Well, the point I'm making, Jack, is this, and it might be unpopular even. Roberto Duran did something that everybody's scared that will happen. Because you're losing and because you're being embarrassed, you're just going to quit. And people pay a lot of money on pay-per-view, pay a lot of money to go down to see fights, to watch two people give it their all. And if we start saying, it's okay to quit when you're behind, then it becomes a sparring match. And people aren't going to pay a lot of money to watch a sparring match. And whether it's obscene or not, people want to see two people stand in the middle of the ring and knock the hell out of each other. That's what boxing is. And if you want to be a boxer, then that comes with the program. And again, I'm not for anybody getting their cheekbone broken, their eye hanging out of their head and saying I'm going to continue fighting. I'm not for that. What I am against, though, is because you're losing or you're embarrassed, like Roberto Durant was, one of the greatest fighters of all time. But he will always be remembered for quitting against Sugar Ray Leonard, no matter how great he is. And if boxing starts doing that, then boxing popularity is going to go out the window. Nobody's going to want to watch boxing anymore. So that's what the fight is. That's what the fighter does. And that's why I'm against 9 times out of 10 a boxer just quitting. What do you think, Doc?
Good question. I think athletes oftentimes, as Jack was saying, sometimes are too tough for their own good. And there are times when you say, I'm just going to push through, even though it doesn't make any sense. There's a great marathon runner named Meb Keflezighi who retired a couple years ago. He won Boston. He won New York. I think it was the London Marathon. He was losing. He wasn't able to do it. He said, you know what? I'm going to bow out because it's better to bow out now to be stronger and win the next time. And I think sometimes that's just a reality. When you're saying, like, if they're going to quit, it's going to become a sparring session. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's only going to be if the other boxer's getting pummeled and really hurt that he's going to quit. And that's usually what happens. And so that's not a sparring session. That's a guy who's gotten beat up and he went into the fight. Now, like with Buster Douglas, he wasn't in shape. And that's a problem. If you show up to your contest and you didn't put your best efforts into it and you just went there to collect a paycheck, that's a problem. And I agree. Then that's an embarrassment to the sport. But if you're in a sport like fighting and you are just getting crushed, I don't think there's anything wrong with at some point saying I can't beat this guy. He's too strong for me. He's going to hurt me. I'm getting hurt or I am hurt. And the thing about boxing that's different than most any other sport is, like in baseball, if a pitcher's getting beat, well, they take him out. You don't have your stuff today. We're not gonna make you pitch 9 innings just because you don't have your good stuff because people came to the ballpark to watch you pitch. You're terrible today, or you ran out of gas, so we're taking you out. And in football and other sports, that if a guy gets hurt or if a guy can't go on, they just sort of take him out, sometimes without any fanfare at all. And they just say he's on the sidelines and he's not playing the rest of the game or whatever. So listen, I think everybody who goes into the ring, anybody who goes into any athletic contest should give it their absolute best. But I think at some points in some contests, it makes sense to say, listen, I've lost this thing. And I'm especially in boxing, I'm getting hurt. I'm not going to sit here and just risk my livelihood and my life or my future by letting this guy pound me for another 3 or 4 rounds.
Well, before you go, Josh, let me counter you a little bit there, Doc. First of all, you can't compare marathon running to boxing. I mean, a marathon is a self-test of endurance. Boxing, you're getting the heck beat out of you, and football players do play injured all the time. What I'm saying though, then they should be boxing. If you're not going to go in there and because you're losing in the 9th round and then you're going to quit, I'm telling you right now, boxing is going to go down the tubes.
I don't think I disagree with that.
But what I'm saying, Doc, is if you don't want to get in there and get the chance of being hurt, which boxing is all about, that's what the sport is. There's no other reason to box, is you want to hit somebody and knock them out or win the fight or get the best of them, or you're going to get the best of you got taken from you. So then don't be a boxer. Because but Doc, what I'm saying is that you're saying, well, if there's losing and I'm getting beat, there's no reason why. Well, then don't box. That's not boxing. That's a sparring section. That's somebody going in there and fooling around. You're getting paid a lot of money, millions of dollars sometimes not that much, but millions of dollars to either beat somebody up or get beat up. That's the sport.
We're talking generically, Matt. You say millions of dollars. Sometimes guys are getting hundreds of dollars for 4 rounders. We're not talking about the small fights. We're talking about right now. We're talking about a major fight, because what Buster Douglas did, he just bowed out, gives a black eye to boxing. What Roberto Duran did gives a black eye to boxing. And if you're going to say it's okay when you're losing a fight like Joe Frazier against Muhammad Ali, they really don't know sometimes if they're losing, Doc. Frazier thought he was losing to Ali in the first fight. He wasn't, but he didn't know that. And if he said, well, I'm losing the heck with it.
No, I don't think guys are quitting at those points. That's my point. I'm saying if you are getting crushed and you're getting hurt and it's to the point where you can't win, Look, if you're the type of fighter who's going to bow out anytime you think you're losing in the 9th round, you're not going to be fighting championship fights anyway, right? You're not going to be somebody who's going to go to the elite level of your sport. But there are times when there are guys that are also who keep going out there and actually, like Ali, he kept fighting when he shouldn't have been fighting anymore. To prove what? To make money or to prove he's the greatest? But I mean, when you look at those last Ali fights, those are hard to watch because this guy's a shell of his former self. And it would have been better for him to not fight or to sit on the stool instead of sitting there and just get pounded. I
agree with you there, Doc. But see, something should have happened to that doctor who approved in the fight. Eventually, the doctor quit. Legal action should have been taken against him and his manager Dundee because they knew what shape he was in. So
listen. Let me give you an example. That's a fighter who maybe no one else has heard of over here, but he was one of the greatest lightweight champions of all time, Carlos Ortiz, a New Yorker from the Bronx. On September 20th, 1972 at Madison Square Garden, he fought the chief supporting fight on the undercard under the Muhammad Ali Floyd Patterson fight. At the end of the 6th round against Ken Buchanan, Ortiz was at the end of the line. He was old. He was on the comeback trail. He wasn't damaged. He wasn't hurt. He just wouldn't get off his stool. He said, I was exhausted. I didn't want to get knocked out. I'm never going to box again. I'm retiring. And this guy had a great career, and they booed him out of the ring, a fellow New Yorker, a legendary fighter in his time, one of the best in the world, pound for pound, but he was old at the end of the line. And to me, that took a lot of courage to retire. He saw he didn't have it anymore, and he admitted, I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want to get knocked out. I'm never going to box again, and he never boxed again. In that case, it was okay. If he felt he couldn't go on, the crowd should have understood. That's what I mean in the case that it's okay. If a guy doesn't want to continue anymore, he shouldn't in most cases.
And what do you think, Josh? We've been yapping away. What do you think about all this?
Well, it seems like everyone's kind of in agreement about a bunch of things. One, that it's not okay to bow out of a fight just because you're losing. But at the same time, it might be okay to call it quits if your health is seriously in jeopardy. And I understand that boxers sign up for this pugilistic profession knowing the health risks. And Mac, you mentioned they used to fight until there was a knockout, and they used to fight 15 rounds also, and they make changes to the sport to take the athlete's health into consideration. And there's just too much longitudinal evidence that we've learned over the last 100 years of this sport that suggests that athletes' health is greatly at risk the more pounding that they take. So far be it from me to tell a guy that he can't bow out of a fight and I know you said, if your orbital bone is broken and your jaw is broken, your eyes popping out of your head. Yeah, we get it. The same thing with like an MMA fight, which is, a close parable. If a guy's in an arm bar, is he supposed to not tap out? Is he supposed to just let the guy break his humerus, break it? Hey, this is what you signed up for, right? Finish the fight. You're not allowed to tap out if you're being submitted. So if a guy's health is in jeopardy, I don't have an issue with it. I do have an issue with if a guy's just behind. And I think, Doc, I think that's a great analogy with taking a pitcher out of a game. Listen, you just don't have your stuff today. It's okay in other sports. And I understand what you were saying, Mac. You football players who play hurt all the time. Football, I think I read a stat that NFL players, football players have a shorter life expectancy than military members even. So when you're talking about the lifelong ramifications of playing hurt, there's a risk reward that a lot of guys in the moment don't necessarily understand. They can't see the big picture because they think if I'm not in this game right now, someone else is going to take my spot. Boxers might have the same kind of mindset, thinking that I've got to earn my next fight. Boxing's the ultimate meritocracy, right? It's just you and another guy in the ring, throwing hands and seeing who can rise up the ranks quicker to get that big payday. Because like Jack said, you're not always fighting for millions of dollars. You got to work your way up to get there. But in the grand scheme of things, I know they know what they signed up for, but far be it for me to tell anyone how to handle their own health.
Well, let me again counter that too, Josh. Right? There are players that NFL players that have a shorter life expectancy. I tell you a quick story about Otto, Jim Otto from the Raiders center. He lost half his legs and was around. He said he wouldn't change a thing. See, you've got to be a certain type of person to be a boxer, or to be an MMA fighter, or to be a football player. You have to be a certain person to want to do this, to actually want to go out there and possibly get injured. That's not normal for most people. So when you're saying the reason why people watch this stuff is because they can't do it, right? They live through the football player, they live through the boxer. Jack writes stories about boxers because he loves boxing. He loves this sport. I coached football and played football for as long as I could. I got injured. I had to stop because I love the game. And we talk sports because I love sports. Well, some of them sports, these guys know that going out there, they're going to risk leg and limb, and they're going. That's the sport, and not everybody can do that. Most people can't do that. So the only thing I'm saying, I agree that if a man's seriously injured, the fight should be stopped. Ali should have never been allowed to continue boxing. Ron Lyle, after that one fight, maybe with maybe the last fight with Frazier, he might have stopped. He still would have been the greatest of all time. I mean, his record still would have been intact. I think that, if you're going to fight this, and if you're going to say it's okay because I'm behind, or I'm out of breath, or I'm not having a good game, or I'm not having a good fight, if you're saying that, the boxers and some players are going to do that. They're going to be behind 10 rounds to nothing, saying they're fighting a 12-round fight. They still have a chance of winning that fight. They still can knock the guy out. But if you're going to give them the option where I can quit because I'm behind, some of the boxers are going to take that option.
Well, I think they have that option already, don't they? Anybody can quit when they want, and the champion's going to keep fighting. But even like I was mentioning with Meb Keflezighi, he was hurt, and he said I could push through and I could run 26.2 miles and really damage myself, or I could do the smart thing here, bow out of the race. He'd never bowed out of a race before. And listen, it's not boxing, but go run 26.2 miles. That'll beat you up for 4 hours if you're a regular guy, or 2 hours if you're a
20-minute marathon. That's below Meb. But yeah, there's an ego part of a sport like boxing where the guys that are gonna bow out in the 9th or 10th round just because they're losing, like we said, they're not going anywhere anyway. The true champions are the ones that are gonna finish the fight. And yeah, there are a lot of people who watch boxing and football for the sheer brutality of it all and the hard hits. And then there are people who really appreciate a sport like boxing for the sweet science. And there are people who watch football to see Aaron Rodgers throw a 50-yard pass into a 12-inch window that, hey, yeah, I could never do that. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the way he flicks his wrists and the ball just goes 50 miles an hour downfield. I appreciate when I see a running back juke somebody or a wide receiver run a really, really crisp route and just turn the cornerback around and just stride into the end zone. So there are other aspects of the sport that aren't, it's not all about brutality.
But the sport is brutal.
It's an aspect of the sport.
Fighters a lot of times quit. They don't do it officially. They shut off during a fight. They're no longer trying to win, and they're hanging in there. And a lot of times they want the referee to stop the fight. They want their corner to stop the fight. They want the doctor to stop the fight. They want someone to pull them out of there. Instead, their corner keeps urging them to try to win when they shut off. And the referee thinks he's doing them a favor. It's like you made a comparison with baseball or marathon running. It's like a pitcher. When you've taken him out of the game and you told him you're out of the game, we're taking you out, we're putting in so-and-so, and then you come back to him 5 minutes later, he's shut off. It's hard for him to regroup. He's basically finished. You send him out to the pitching mound again, he's not the same. And that's what happens with fighters. They shut off sometimes during a fight. They decide, I don't think I can win this fight anymore. And what do we want? We want them to stay in there, take punches, take a beating to just hear the final bell. If they don't want to, that should be their right.
Well, a lot of great points both ways. Again, I didn't say I agreed with my stand, but it had to be a debate, so I brought up as much ammo as I could to make it interesting. So
you did a good job, Mac. You did a good job from that end, playing devil's advocate. Kudos to you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to take our last break for the show. I know that Doc has to check out. He's got some things to do. Josh, you want to stay with us, or you got to check out too?
No, I'll stay.
All right, great. So we'll be right back on the other side of this break. Doc, thanks for stopping in. It's always a pleasure having you on. And,
see you next week.
Take care, Doc. You redeemed yourself with the trivia question this week.
Spud Chandler, baby. Spud Chandler.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Okay, guys, we'll be right back after this break with a couple more topics and a little bit more sports for you. So stay tuned.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? He's off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
baby. There we go.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live Sunday through Wednesday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer, and our special guest, Josh Rubin, who not only knows a lot about the Mets, but knows a lot about a lot. So I'm glad he's on with us today. Let's bring all three up so we can get a look at Jack's beautiful face. I know people tune in just for that. We do have Snowflake Pillow is in the room, so I'm glad he joined us. He comes in. He's pretty much a regular on the show, too, so we're glad that he joined us today. We've had some really spirited debates. We just had Dr. Paul Semendinger on from the blog, Start Spreading the News. It's an unbelievable New York Yankee blog, folks. If you get a chance, go check it out. It's not just about the Yankees. It's about all sports, all baseball. But he has quite a blog over there where he plays all kinds of segments, has a lot of writers, very popular, millions of views over there. And he also is an award-winning author with Scattering the Ashes, a great book about a father and son who the father dies and the son goes back to spread his ashes at certain places they were at and relives some of them special moments with his father. It's really a really touching, great book. So if you get a chance, go over there and read it. So he was on earlier. We are on Northeast Streaming Sports. If you get a chance, go over to the YouTube channel if you're not on it right now and subscribe. It helps us grow, gets us better guests, more information. We also got our N.E. Streaming Sports Facebook page. All the shows are there, guys. We have dozens of shows over there, all versatile, all have different outlooks on sports, all different in their own way. So it's a great Facebook page. It's a great YouTube channel. Check it out if you can. We're also on Zodiac TV Global Live. We partnered up with them not too long ago, and all of our shows are going around the world right now. So it's pretty exciting how Northeast Streaming Sports and the Mac and Jack show are growing. We're also, guys, if you get a chance, you can't get to a screen like you are right now, or that you will be seeing later as you view this when we share it. We're also on a lot of different audio outlets. The biggest ones, guys, we're on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Pandora, and Spotify. So if you can't make it to a screen, you're in your car, you're at work, you're working out at home or at a gym, you can just put your headphones on and listen to Northeast Streaming Sports. So we're like Snowflake Pillow he's just throwing things at me right now. So I'm just kind of laughing and chuckling at his comments. I'll show you one of them. I don't know what that means, but Smoke Signals, I guess, is a great movie. So check that out, I guess, if you get a chance. So anyway, let's get back to the debate, Jack and Josh. I'm not sure who goes first. Is it you this time, Jack, or is it me? Who's going first this time?
I'll go for both of us, Mac.
Okay.
Three of us. Now, Josh will have his own views. You'll have yours. I don't care, Mac.
Okay. All right.
All come out the same.
Okay, so we're gonna go with our wide receivers more important than running backs. Why don't you say us off?
Yeah, or why? Yeah, in this day and age, they are. Now, Mac, I know you're old school. Okay, Josh, I'm sure is more modern, younger, but we're older, so you're more old school. I know, Mac, you've talked in the past, you like to pound and ground and all that. But listen, if you need any evidence that wide receivers are a lot more important than running backs in this day and age, just look at the NFL draft. Look at all the wide receivers taken. They were in major demand. It was not until the 24th selection that a running back was picked, that Najee Harris by the Pittsburgh Steelers out of Alabama. And then Jacksonville takes Travis Etienne with the 25th pick But then later, Urban Meyer said, you know, he missed out on getting Kadarius Toney, who the Giants took with the 20th pick. That's the guy he really wanted to take. And Nick Saban himself, no matter what you think of Nick Saban, you have to admit he's a great, great college coach, arguably the best of all time, but that's a debate. That's for another debate. And Nick Saban said the game has changed. The game is no longer about field position and moving the chains little by little. You need players that could stretch the field, and wide receivers are a lot more likely to stretch the field than a running back. So the game has changed like an awful lot, and I don't think you can dispute, anymore the effect of throwing the ball downfield. I mean, that's what just the nature of the game has changed. Running backs is still obviously important. Every position's important. But to get a great wide receiver, he's so much more of a weapon in this day and age than a running back. So if you have to choose between the two, which is more important, I think the elite, the great wide receiver, is more important in modern football today.
Well, let me follow, and we'll let Josh put his 2 cents in afterwards. Listen, wide receivers, of course, are not more important than running backs. And I'll go general for a minute, Jack, and then I'll bring a specific. People who never played the game of organized football, or maybe played a couple of years and aren't really knowing the game, how it's set up. Of course, there's no position more important than any position. In fact, it's the most player-dependent sport there is, right? No matter how great the quarterback is, without an offensive line, he's not gonna win the big game. I mean, all you have to do is just look at Nick Foles compared to Dan Marino, right? Nick Foles is nowhere close to Dan Marino, but Nick Foles won a Super Bowl and Dan Marino did not. That's why Jim Plunkett had 2 Super Bowls and Fran Tarkenton failed 3 times. It's because of the team, Jack. So when you're talking about if you're passing versus running, it doesn't matter as long as you score, right? I don't care if the league leans towards passing or not now. You have to have a running game. And it was shown just this year in the Super Bowl, right? I mean, you had probably the most 2 prolific football quarterbacks in the league. One, the greatest of all time, arguably, and one up and coming might be one of the greatest of all time. And when Tampa Bay needed to run the ball, they ran the ball. The Chiefs could not run the ball. The Chiefs could not, in fact, because they could not run the ball, they couldn't pass the ball. I mean, you look at the Titans, Jack, right? The Titans almost go to championship because of the running game. It has nothing to do with their passing game. Got Eddie Henry out there running like crazy, and he could have been MVP last year. So if you're looking at who's more important, I don't know of any team that won a Super Bowl or that has been successful that has not had a good running game, right? The Patriots, when they first started out, who was their top receiver? Troy Brown? No, that wasn't their top receiver. That was their top receiver, but it wasn't a top receiver in the league. Even when Jerry Rice was catching all those footballs from Joe Montana, they had a great running game, Jack. You had Ricky Waters, who was running the football, one of the best at the time. You had Roger Craig running the football, who was one of the best running backs in the game at the time. So for you to say that it's more important is absolutely false. The running back shelf life is very small. It's only got an average of 4 years, but that doesn't mean it's not important. All that means is that because they get hit all the time, they have a shorter lifespan in the NFL. So I believe, Jack, that without a running game, there is no passing game. And you can look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. You just named that. You just went with the Pittsburgh Steelers that they drafted a running back. It was late, but it was in the first round. Pittsburgh jumped out to an 11-0 lead, Jack, with Big Ben throwing to those dynamic receivers. Where did they end up? They had no running game. They were like 24th, 25th in the league. That's why Pittsburgh wasn't successful. You look at the Cleveland Browns. You think Baker Mayfield?
Right, they jumped up to an 11-0 record and they weren't successful. Let me get that.
Were they? If you win 11-0 and you don't even get to the championship, you call that successful? I don't. So, I mean, if you think the Cleveland Browns almost went to the Super Bowl because of Baker Mayfield and wide receiving core, you're sadly mistaken. That was all Nick Chubb's and Hunt. The running game of the Cleveland Browns is what brought them to that point. Baker Mayfield was lucky to have that running game there, or he wouldn't look as good as he did last year. So, are they swayed more to the passing now? Yes, that's for sure. And that will change again, Jack, as the defenses kind of adjust to the passing game. They'll start running the ball more again. So it's a cycle right now, Jack. I mean, if you look over the history of football, you go back to Air Coryell, you go back to the run and shoot with the Detroit Lions and the Houston Oilers. They didn't win any championships, no Super Bowls, because they did not concentrate on the running game. So.
Matt, we're talking the modern NFL.
I am talking
about 30 years ago. That would have been the case. We're talking about the modern NFL.
I'm talking about NFL too. What do the Baltimore Ravens do with the football, Jack? They're competitive. What do? They run the football. Whether it's quarterback or running back, they run with the football. They don't pass the ball to win the games, do they? No.
Lamar Jackson is a quarterback, not
running back.
Technically a running back. Lamar Jackson isn't the greatest passer. They didn't have the weapons there. They got Sammy Watkins, the Ravens, this year for Lamar Jackson because they realized the importance of getting him an elite receiver.
Let me tell you something, Jack. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to help the Ravens at all. The Ravens are a running football team. They don't have the quarterback to throw the ball. I'm telling you straight up, right? I'm going to tell you straight up. I'm telling you right now also, the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator got fired because they couldn't run the ball. That's how important the running game still is. And that's because they collapsed. I'm telling you, Jack, the wide receiver is not more important than the running back. That's
how do you explain the NFL draft where they went heavy on receivers ahead of running backs?
That's because the ultimate score right away, Jack. That don't mean they're more important. That means
they took the players with the most importance who would help the team more.
No, I'll tell you the answer, Jack. The reason that running backs continue to fall in the draft is because teams have learned that you can get basically 90% of the output from a running back in the second round as you would from a top 5 pick like Ezekiel Elliott or Saquon Barkley. Just look at the AFC Championship game 2 years ago with the 49ers. They had Raheem Mostert run for 220 yards in that game. This was a guy who was on practice squads for 6 other teams and never played. I mean, you can get from backups like Tony Pollard on the Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott was ready to sit out, and then he was like, I might lose my job if I don't come back, because they're seeing that this guy can produce basically 90% of what I can do, and they only have to pay them a fraction of what they have to pay me. But the fact is, I know that you're comparing running backs to wide receivers, and Mac, I agree with you with what you said, that football is the most team-oriented sport by far. But the real argument is that people learn from this Super Bowl that the most important position on the field is actually offensive line. Without an offensive line, nothing else happens. You can have the greatest quarterback in the world, and if you don't have an offensive line to protect him to throw or to open up holes to run, nothing's going to happen. Wide receivers and running backs are equally unimportant without a good offensive line. And when the question was first posed, I was very much on Jack's side. But, Mac, you made some excellent points about the running game. And although I don't think the running game opens up the passing game as much in today's NFL as it did, say, 20 or 30 years ago, I do agree that it's still very, very important. Even though a guy like Eddie George, who played for the Titans in the late 90s and early 2000s, he would have games where he would rush the ball 40 times. That just doesn't happen anymore. Guys are rushing 20 to 25 times in a game. So that would be the argument as to why wide receivers are more important, because they're more utilized. And yes, they do spread the field, and the game has just become an aerial attack. But yeah, in terms of, when you said, think about teams that have won the Super Bowl, aside from the Chiefs 2 years ago, and obviously they still had a strong running game, a a lot of Super Bowl champions, are based around good running games. But it all starts with the offensive line. So I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, because I did go into it thinking that the answer is clear-cut wide receiver. But Mac, you made some compelling arguments about the running game.
Well, the only thing I know, guys, of course, is as you said, which I agree with wholeheartedly, in the offense, of course, the offensive line. Any offensive lineman is the most important position, because without them, I don't care who you got throwing the ball or who you got running the ball. It really doesn't matter. When it comes to most important football, it's so hard. You could say the quarterback is the most important, but
in all of sports, not just football,
because he's the leader on the field. But again, I don't care how great a quarterback you are. And it's been proven throughout history, too. You can be an average quarterback and still go to the Super Bowl.
Nick Foles,
right?
Like you said.
Jim Plunkett. I mean, there's countless cases. We go on and on about it. And you got some great quarterbacks like Jim Kelly, Fran Tarkenton, Dan Marino, who have never won Super Bowls. Dan Fouts never won Super Bowls, a big game, because, you have to have the complete team. But if you're just going to say wide receivers, running backs, and I don't know how you want to phrase that. Like you said, it doesn't have to be a drafted player. It could be somebody that's and another point is that they use their running backs to throw to a lot now too. They're not just running with the ball. They're great running backs. McCaffrey, Saquon when he's healthy, even Ezekiel Elliott, even him, he catches the ball. So I mean, it has changed a little bit. There used to be a time when they threw the ball a lot more than they ran, especially in the old AFL. But that's for another day. But to say wide receivers.
But Mac, Josh's argument, though, the teams were thinking drafting, and it was a good argument that they can get running backs later on in the draft. So it's not that they're less important. Why didn't they think the other way? Why didn't they go with the best running backs early and think, we could always get some good receivers later on in the second, third round? They didn't quite think in reverse. I'm just talking about today's NFL. In recent times, maybe that when I think of today's NFL, I'm talking about the last couple of years, the way the mentality has changed. Okay,
It's because the disparity between a great running back and a backup running back is not as great as the disparity between a great wide receiver and a backup wide receiver.
Okay, but I'm asking now, are you bolstering my argument about an elite great wide receiver being more important than a great running back? I'm not sure. There's the rare running back. If you could get an Eric Dickerson, to me, he's more important than an elite wide receiver. But they're so uncommon, the few truly great running backs you can get. I think you can get more great wide receivers than you can get truly great running backs.
Well, let me ask you a question, Jack. If you were the Detroit Lions, right, and you had your choice between Barry Sanders and Megatron, both great at their positions, and you had a chance to take either one of those, you only could take one of them, and Megatron was unbelievable as a wide receiver, who would you take?
I would take Barry Sanders because he falls into the category of the very rare great running back, okay? Megatron was great, but I can get receivers who could resemble him, maybe like a Sammy Watkins, who the Ravens picked up. If he puts it all together, he can resemble Megatron, come at least somewhat close to him. But you're not going to get anyone who's really going to come close to Barry Sanders. It's extremely rare that you could.
Yeah, in the NFL, you've got Julio Jones and DK Metcalf at the wide receiver position who really resemble Megatron, right. But there's nobody who resembles Barry Sanders.
Except for maybe Saquon when he's hurt. That's the only one I could.
Yeah, Saquon resembled him when he was healthy. Yeah, and maybe he'll do it again.
We'll see what happens with that. But again, it's the reason why it's so hard to say anything position is more important. I mean, you could put quarterback in there because he could win you a couple games just on by himself with some great calls and audibles and reading the defense. But you could say that about some great running backs too, Jack. Jim Brown, as you mentioned, Eric Dickerson, John Riggs. I mean, I could go on and on. These guys will win you games just with their outstanding play at running back. So,
Hey, listen, it's the same argument that flip-flops. If we talk baseball and they said, Well, who would you rather have, Sandy Koufax or Mariano Rivera? Do I want to start off every few days, or do I want to relieve? I could use a lot more. It's the mindset of the game. The game changes. I think the culture of the game changes temporarily. Now I think they're putting more emphasis on the wide receiver, but that could change in a couple of years.
I think it will, Jack, because you're gonna look at the defenses will end up catching up to the offenses, sort of like Tampa Bay did with Kansas City. They're going to end up putting more defensive backs in that, and then the offense will make the adjustment. Well, it's going to start time for pounding again and make the defense chase us again, and that normally is a cycle when it comes to football. So anyway, folks, we're going to try and get our last debate, and we're really short, so it's got to be short, Jack. We got 9 minutes. Should the Nets trade the top 3 if they don't win a championship this year?
I'll make it quick. The answer is no. If you need an example, look, when LeBron went to the Miami Heat, he joined Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. They didn't win it the first year. Imagine they moved on from that. How bad that would have turned out, because they won the NBA title the next 2 years after that and went to the finals in the third year after that. Listen, if 2 years go by and they don't win it and there's a little dissension, you make the deal. Barring an injury, all 3 are going to have trade value if they haven't won it after 2 years. Harden, Durant, or Irving, they could move on easily from one after 2 years. You give it a shot. There has to be a team chemistry. They haven't played together a lot. Now they're all 3 supposedly healthy, and it's all systems go for the playoffs. But look, there are other good teams too. Maybe another team just steps up and they're a little better than you on a given year. I would play this out at least a couple of years, this big 3. If they haven't won an NBA title after 2 years, reevaluate the situation. And then you say, could we win it with these guys a third year? And then I would revisit it, but not after 1 year. No, I wouldn't move on from the big 3 unless there's serious dissension between them and there's no evidence that there is.
Real quick, I'll say that they should not trade all 3, but at least 1. I think Kyrie is the type of player that is great by himself, but he cannot play together with a team. He kind of made him a point in himself, at least the spoken leader of the team. And when he scores a lot of points, the Knicks lose. And I got a quick couple examples for you. Nets beat the Bulls the last few games, right, that the Nets have been winning. When the Nets beat the Bulls, Kyrie only played 21 minutes and scored 13 points. But the Nets lose to Dallas when Kyrie scores 45. The Nets lose to the Bucks when Kyrie scores 38. The Nets lose to Portland when Kyrie's the leading scorer. There's a pattern there. Kyrie likes to hold on to the ball. Harden has made an effort, man. I give the man a lot of credit because he was the reason why Houston was where they were in his shooting. He has become an assist machine, and he still's got that shot. Durant easily is the best basketball player out of all 3 of them on that team. But with Kyrie there, he's trouble. He's trouble wherever he's been. He's trouble. He was trouble in Boston when he had a shot to be the leader there. So if you don't share the ball with 2 potential Hall of Famers that are on your team, I don't know when you'll share the ball. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird shared the ball. They were the superstars of their team, at least the leaders of the team. And the same thing goes with any great championship team. So I think if they don't win the championship this year, they should at the very least, let Kyrie Irving go, either trade him or whatever you got to do. But just let that guy get out of there. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I don't think they should trade any of them if they don't win this year. Only one team gets to win the championship every year, and Jack's point of the 2010 Heat with LeBron, Bosh, and Wade is the perfect example to point to. I disagree. I don't think that Irving is a good player when he's the leader. I think he's in the perfect position right now with James Harden, where he gets to play off the ball and let Harden play point guard. And they kind of determined that pretty early on in the when Harden came over to Brooklyn. Irving was great when he was with LeBron in that 2016-17 year when he got to play off the ball. Now he's getting to play off the ball. I really think their games complement each other very well. They've only played 7 or 8 games together, all 3 of them. They're about to enter a playoff run where, you know, there are good teams in the East also. You know, Philadelphia and Milwaukee are good teams. So it wouldn't be a shock for them to not even make the finals, but I wouldn't consider that a failed season by any means, especially when you've got all 3 of them under contract for the next 2 seasons after this. Why not run it back for a full season, you know, for hopefully full 82 games. Hopefully they could play together for, you know, 65 of those games. I see no reason to break this up. They've got a great team around them. Bruce Brown has been great for them. Blake Griffin has really surprised me in how he's played. He must have been miserable in Detroit. But there's no shame in not winning a championship in the first year together. Because like I said, only one team gets to win. And if you're trading them, any of them, what are you trading them for? Picks? That's a complete crapshoot. Are you trading them for an established star? In that case, you're kind of in the same position you're in right now. Or are you paying that, or you're trading them for more role players, which they've got great role players in Joe Harris, and even DeAndre Jordan has played his role very well this year. So I say hold on to them. I see no reason to trade them.
The only thing I'll disagree with you totally against, Josh, is Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving had a good year with Cleveland. The only reason why he was even close to having a good year with Cleveland was, of course, because of LeBron James. You've got to have chemistry on a team, Josh. You can't just have great players that are Hall of Famers that play together. Kyrie Irving is not a great team player. When he gets the ball, he doesn't like to give it up. When he scores 45 points, everybody on the team has 3 assists. They don't play team ball. And to win a championship, you got to play team ball. I don't care how great your team is. LeBron James on the Miami Heat had his role. In fact, Dwayne Wade stepped down so LeBron James could take leadership there. Bosh had his role. Wade had his role. And of course, LeBron had his role. On the 76ers, I don't see any roles besides Harden. They got a good bench. I'll agree with you there. But they're starting 3. Kyrie Irving is not going to help them. In fact, he's going to hurt them this year, and probably will hurt them in the next few years if they keep him there. I think Kyrie Irving is not a team player at all. He's like Wilt Chamberlain, but not as dominating, if you know what I mean.
Well, we're talking about running it back one more year after this year. Then if they don't win the NBA title this year and they don't win it next year, then you see how you can improve the team. Then you evaluate it. You're going to come back 1 year after that. You have to see how close you come, the circumstances. For all we know, one of the big 3 are going to get injured during the playoffs. We'll only have 2 of the big 3, and they won't quite get it done this year. I mean, it's a tough one. And Kyrie Irving, it's going to be hard to get equal value on the court because, as you're saying, Mac, there is an attitude problem. So what? And like Josh says, I mean, what do you want to get back in return? Picks? That's not going to do it. I mean, they gave up all these picks. It's either NBA championship or bust for these big 3 at some point, you know, while they're together.
Well, I agree with you, Jack. I just think you could get rid of Kyrie for nothing, and the Nets win the championship. How's that? I think they would win it. So, you know, but again, as Pag says here, defense wins games, and the Nets don't have the best defensive team out there.
But the Nets can just outscore everybody. You know, they really can. They can just keep up with everybody else scoring. They don't even need stops because they scored historic paces in the fourth quarter.
Tell that to the Milwaukee Bucks when Milwaukee Bucks are kicking their butt every time they play.
This is for Paxton, though. He's a Philly guy. If the Nets and the Sixers, if neither win the title, if you trade Kyrie Irving to the Sixers, Doc Rivers probably feels he could handle him for Tobias Harris. That would make some sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Listen, I just watched Kyrie Irving his years. He's an incredible basketball player. But when it comes to playing with a team, he ain't so incredible. And just because he hit one big shot in the championship doesn't make him a team player. That's for sure. Because if it wasn't for LeBron James, they would have been smelled the championship that year. So, folks, we're ready to get out of today's show. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for all the views. Thanks to Dr. Paul Semendinger for coming in early. Josh, incredible job today. Pleasure having you on. A a lot of great points, a lot of great information. And Jack, as always, we always have fun on our debate show. So that'll be pretty much it for today. Tomorrow, guys, we have our This Week in Sports, where we have Robert Butler coming on with his great commentary. Me and Jack will, of course, go through the week's biggest stories. And we're going to start our NFL team schedule breakdown, the locals. We're going to go through every local team, look at their schedule, and make predictions on where they're going to finish. We'll do more as we get closer to the NFL season. We're going to start off with the Buffalo Bills tomorrow. New York's real team, folks. I mean, we talk about the Giants and the Jets. Well, they're not New York anymore. The Buffalo Bills are really the New York team, and that's who we're going to start out with. Had a great year last year. Should have another great year. We'll see. I'm not so sure about that. Jack pretty much, I think, is sure about that, but we'll see. So, again, folks, thanks for joining us. Have a great Saturday night, and we'll see you tomorrow, 8 to 10 a.m., same places. Have a great day.